Hello, everybody. We are here for episode 4 of the Culture of. Now, this is going to be an interesting conversation for these times.
Mm-hmm.
But first, introductions. I am your co host, Gary J. Nix, and to my left, we have, as always,
I am Amber Chenevert, and I am a gracious and delighted co-host.
for sure, and co founder, because
Oh
this is,
yes,
this, is, this is a business we got here.
that's right. That's right.
So let's just jump in. Y'all know to subscribe, like, rate us, give us 5 stars, comment, share, do all the fun stuff to help us grow this podcast. Because this is only episode 4, so we're starting, but we're trying to grow something here. Okay? So let's go ahead and just rise above the noise with today's topic.
All right. So today's topic is about the culture of belonging.
Mhm.
Who's in and who's out, and how do we decide? And then what are all sort of those cultural cues that begin to impact that? And for us, we were thinking about, okay, what's that major tension? Because as strategists, we got to have a tension.
Mhm.
And the tension is presently in our culture, particularly in the United States, there's this tension between us versus them. And historically, that could have been fueled with playful banter, jokes that we could all come together potentially at the foot of a comedian.
Mhm.
But nowadays, we have gotten to a place where it's not just funny banter or little jibes here and there. Now it becomes potentially dangerous tribalism. And so it leads us to ask these questions about, when we're thinking about the culture of belonging, who is deserving of belonging?
Right.
Who is deserving of being included? And what does that mean for brands in particular?
Correct. And there's no mistake that we're having this conversation now.
Mm-hmm.
It's not to say that we wouldn't have had this conversation regardless, but this conversation is certainly more apropos now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And this conversation is affecting both business and society at large,
Mm-hmm.
at scale,
Mm-hmm.
at any level you can think of. Because once again, it is about the fact that there are similarities between how we live and how businesses operate.
Mm-hmm.
And we're seeing it a whole lot more now. So belonging has in some ways become the softened term to use because it's
Great.
not it doesn't have the, at least not yet, it doesn't have the same effect to those that don't really believe in it. They haven't figured out a way to completely downplay the word belonging
Or
on its
demonize it.
own. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're trying to figure it out, but
Mm-hmm.
they haven't figured out that, like, okay, this is where our compromise will be in terms
Mm-hmm.
of language being used. But at the same time, there is something about belonging that actually does include diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
All three, not just one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So let's decode a little bit more about what belonging has to be, how how the popular political culture is demonizing it and really playing around with the brand or the what we had once perceived the brand of America to be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, because even I had contributed to an article about the brand of America and like American made and how that makes people feel and how it's a lot different now
Mm-hmm.
for many people
Mm-hmm.
than it once was.
Well, I think when we're talking about belonging, I think in 2025, we have questions related to, as I started to discuss before, who's deserving?
Right.
Who is deserving of being included? Who is deserving of the resources, the opportunities that potentially Brand America has to offer?
Mm-hmm.
And who is not deserving? And then how do we negotiate the distribution of resources in this country as a result of that?
Mm-hmm.
That's fundamentally the definition of politics, essentially. But that is the present moment that we're in. And I think for Brand America, very similarly to what we were talking about in our last conversation, we were discussing future proofing.
Mm-hmm.
If we were going to look at that from a Brand America standpoint, really having that discussion about how are we going to negotiate belonging
Mm-hmm.
is an important one, because even if it doesn't fit into the imagination of all people who might consider themselves Americans, we need all of these different people from different backgrounds and experiences in order to make this thing run and go.
Yeah.
It has historically been our strength. It can continue to be our strength. That's whether everybody likes it or not. But that's a reality, right? But there are like forces out there that don't want that to be the reality, but still want to benefit from that reality, which is its own conflict and tension,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, and so how do we begin to negotiate that? And how does Brand America negotiate that? Because then it's not just about us, it's also about our relationships in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And how even those are being reconsidered and renegotiated in ways that I don't think you and I ever thought would be a thing. Like allies who become challenging friendships,
Mm-hmm.
and enemies that have become allies. It's just, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a cynic, so I'm really not as surprised, probably. But there's, to your point, there is a relationship between what the newer definition of Brand America is, how it fits against the previous version,
Mm-hmm.
how the previous version was not as accurate as we once wanted it to be, or that we ever, or as it was ever supposed to be,
Mm-hmm.
and the ways to either combat or mitigate or deal within the space of this country and the brand of this country.
Mm-hmm.
When you were bringing up your points, I thought of where we're recording right now.
Mm-hmm.
I thought about the reasons that I've learned why WTF Media Studios actually exists.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something, the creation of this space
Mm-hmm.
where we're recording,
Mm-hmm.
the creation of, or the fact that we came to a decision to record here, in a sense, to future proof our podcast.
Mm-hmm.
It being an illustration that we've seen over and over and over again of people who are deserving but are being held down, and creating something that's absolutely amazing anyway. Because one, is linked to our survival. Two, it's linked to our power. It's like linked to our creativity.
Mhm.
It's linked to us being able to make a lot out of a little, which is great. But how many times does it have to be done?
Right.
If we're in a space of belonging, then there's still going to be times when people can make something super powerful out of a little, just
Mhm.
because that's what innovation can look like. That's just like, oh, well, someone didn't think about it from this standpoint. Let's create this and make it grow.
Mhm.
But so many spaces like this are built on belonging, and then you have people that feel left out and
Mhm.
assume that because they don't see themselves,
Mhm.
that they can't be a part of something,
Mhm.
when all they have to do is respect what's happening, respect the people who are doing something, and join in.
This assumes that the people who are anti have the same access to exposure as the people who are championing belonging. Think
It does.
what I have learned recently is that um, I think people have been a lot more isolationist than I even potentially thought was possible in 2025
Mm-hmm.
because of the internet.
Mm-hmm.
But what the algorithms do is create these echo chambers to keep you even more isolated, even when you have access to the whole world around you in a way that you wouldn't have had 30 years ago. You know?
Right.
So there is a tension there where it's almost like so many people have the world at their fingertips, but are, by way of their own upbringing, echo chamber, can be even more isolated than they have been in present times than in the past. And that isolation can breed lots of misinformation and misunderstanding about who you perceive as your enemy or the other side. And that colors your perspective on whether the other side is deserving or not.
Mm-hmm.
And all of that is on purpose
Right.
because there are powerful people that benefit from that separation versus the belonging.
Right. It's the most dangerous form of connectivity, because it's connectivity without, or it can be connectivity without nuance, without um consideration of everything that's going on.
Mhm.
It can find ways to tap into that human nature of wanting to be a part of something,
Mhm.
but it can do so in a way that just continues to reiterate and further support what it is you already think, whether it's right or wrong.
Yeah.
So now you're connecting with people who just agree with you, which only lasts until, if there's no real relationship being built, it only lasts until someone disagrees with you.
Mhm.
And now it's like, okay, just F this person
Right.
because they don't agree. And we've
Mhm.
we've seen it happen in so many different forms and so many different levels through technology.
Mhm.
While the technology also has room for learning, but who's kind of monitoring that to help determine what is real, what is fake, um, what is somewhere in the middle,
Mhm.
what is just opinion, what is informed opinion, what is uh, a good faith conversation, what is all these different nuances that actually do matter, um, that make, or that can make, the idea of belonging harder to understand and execute.
Yes. And then also the layer on top of that is now AI is picking up on
Hmm.
these sort of divisions and this misinformation.
I mean,
Um,
it's in part trained on it.
right, exactly, trained on it. And because of that, now we're getting who's deserving and who's not at significant scale.
Hmm.
And as we discussed before, without necessarily the critique, and critique comes from regulation, um, about how these systems are shaping our world and potentially erasing certain people, community histories from like our day-to-day access.
Right.
So then how does that impact belonging when I'm supposed to be able to, have freedom of information by way of my internet search, but I have whole spaces that are just dropped off or eliminated because of what the data is being trained on.
Right. And shoot, in a way, that's a kind of negative future proofing, right? Because if information, or really anything, but we're talking about information right now, if the tactile versions, if the tangible versions of that start to disappear,
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot easier to get rid of the digital versions or hide them somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Which then puts history in an interesting place where what we sometimes think about storytelling, you can be a historical storyteller. You can also just be a storyteller.
You can. And then what I would add is, just based on our previous conversation, everything old is new again.
Yeah.
And so when we're talking about belonging and the culture of belonging, to your point, so much of that is related to the stories that are being told about all of the people who are supposed to belong to this thing that we call
Mm-hmm.
brand America.
Right.
And if that belonging can now in 2025 be dictated by these sort of digital stories that are being told, which they are, what does that mean for the future of brand America?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, these are all great points. I just don't want it to be the doom and gloom episode.
Correct. Yes.
So, let's kind of take longer than a moment to talk more about belonging, what it does look like,
Mm-hmm.
not just what it should look like, but what it does look like,
Mm-hmm.
and why it is an advantage for business and society as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll start with business. Belonging is meaningful in business because we will continue to, in an ongoing fashion, advocate for the humans. We know that there is this agenda to have AI replace all of the jobs and all of the workers. Um, but, and it's possible that over time, yes, AI will be able to do some jobs, but there's some things that are so relational that need that human touch because that's what people get out of bed for
Yep.
in the morning.
Absolutely.
If we were just going to exist on AI, there's no reason to have return to office.
Correct.
Because why? If we're not going to prioritize the humans or the human interaction,
Mm-hmm.
So there's something about the human connection, the humanity. Further, we know that people are craving that even more, particularly post-pandemic, multi-generationally for different reasons. But the in real life is something that's being craved. You're not going to just nail that with AI. There's certain jobs, of course, that it can serve, but the marketplace and that desire in the marketplace should be reflected in the businesses and brands that want to serve that marketplace. And so belonging is going to be important there.
Mm-hmm.
Further, last time we talked about innovation, it has been documented and proven over and over again that those companies that are engaging more diverse people, perspectives, points of view are more profitable because they can benefit from all of those ideas in order to make their business run better, their products better for their customers, and to help to solidify the brand in culture in a place that feels like more people can be drawn to.
Yeah. I mean, and it's such simple math.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how is it possible? I mean, so CEO of Elf Beauty went on TV and talked about like, no, we're not going to give this up. That this is how we become successful. This is how we grow.
Mm-hmm.
This is how we make our money, and I'm not giving up any of my money for this. Like, this is completely ridiculous to think that we would step back on this. A lot of like the heydays of the MCU, like if capitalism is going to be about getting all the money,
Mm-hmm.
get all the money.
I mean, I'm with you, but here's what I've learned.
Mm-hmm.
That there are some people that would be willing to throw it all away and to burn
Plenty,
it all down
plenty.
than to get all the money.
Yep.
To me, that is not a reflection of capitalism. That is something else.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, a real capitalist is going to be thinking about what's the best opportunity for us to grow? What's the best opportunity for us to monetize? What's the best opportunity to bring more people into the fold versus excluding others? I recognize that there's certain brands that have built reputations on being exclusive in the luxury space, etc. One, the price point would keep most people out
Mm-hmm.
anyway, right? But still, having a perspective on belonging means that you're going to want to bring everybody in to the brand who can
Correct.
afford.
Correct.
Everyone, or even people who want to sacrifice in order to be able to have access to that particular brand, product, or service. We're talking about brands who have who are not luxury brands, who don't necessarily have that exclusion, that have taken on this, I'm going to get rid of belonging in service to people or entities that actually don't serve their bottom line. And it's hurting them right now. I still believe there's ways to turn around from that. But
Mm-hmm.
like this sort of anti DE&I, this anti belonging, I am not convinced that this is good for anyone's business.
Oh, of course not. I mean, we see it. And also, just quick framing disclaimer here, okay? We're talking about capitalism because a large part of this podcast is business related. Okay, this is not the pro capitalism podcast. It's the business podcast. Okay, just want to make that very clear because when we get clipped and you don't pay attention to this anyway, I want to have it on record that that there's an explanation as to why this conversation is going in this direction. But sorry about that. Let's go back to this. I still think that the capitalism example is an illustration of why belonging is better, why belonging works, why we're talking about it, even when we did the beginning about the attacks on belonging in different ways, whether they are trying to or building systematic ways of breaking it down, whether they're using language to break it down, whether they're using the misinformation to get people to think that belonging is a bad idea
Mhm.
when even the people who think that it's a bad idea want to belong to something in the first
Mhm.
place.
Yeah. That's another significant tension. These same people who are anti-DNI, anti-belonging, are on the hunt and have a hunger to belong themselves to something. And then why would you deny that to others?
Right.
When you find that belonging, you benefit from it. But it goes back to what I was saying at the beginning, which is who is deserving?
Mm-hmm.
Who should be included in We the People? That is like the central thing that we have been struggling with over the course of our history. And we're not going to just stop in 2025. We're still in the midst of that struggle. It, has a different experience of it because we're so in the throes of the digital age. Um, but it's still wrestling with the same song and dance that we've been doing
Yeah.
for over the course of our history.
Yeah. I as the hip hop head here,
Mm-hmm.
especially since uh last year, anytime I can refer to anything Kendrick related, I'm going to take the opportunity to do so.
All right.
And what came to mind was his beginning in Chains and Whips, the beginning of his verse in there. Uh, and it kind of flows with the segments of the show. But his first two lines are, I'm not the candidate to vibe with. I don't fuck with the kumbaya shit.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think that second part is an interesting version of what we're talking about um, with belonging.
Mm-hmm.
And it just made me one, it just made me think of that. And two, it made me think about from a business standpoint, once again, how critical it is for these companies to not only pay attention but learn from the successes and the failures. You know, a lot of times companies seem to be afraid to admit failure, and instead of admitting it and trying to fix it, they just continue to fail because they don't change.
Mm-hmm.
And I may or may not be talking about a certain large retailer
Mm-hmm.
with a circular logo and a crimson hue. But I think that's the kind of lesson that everyone can learn from. Not only what is the philosophy at the top of your company? Are they there to maximize revenue, which should be their job? Or are they there to potentially maximize the amount of money that they feel is good enough for themselves to make and let everything burn down as long as they're good?
I mean, I, we're not going to know the answer to that question for any of these companies until that happens or it doesn't, because we're still in the middle of it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, and yeah, and we talked about this in the beginning. I think what's revealing about this moment is, particularly for these big companies, like, everybody's agenda is not maximum profit like we might have thought. Like you would have learned in school that would have been your priority.
B school assumption. Yeah.
Yeah. Um so the question is like, what do you do with that?
Mm-hmm.
You know? Because it's getting more clear to us who are the companies and the businesses that are about maximizing profits, and that is their priority,
Mm-hmm.
shareholder value, et cetera, et cetera. Um, those who are striving for that, but potentially not there yet, and the ones who are just like, we'll let it burn to the ground. And it is just astonishing. That is the one thing about this moment in time that I didn't expect,
Mm-hmm.
was how many companies are just willing to say, we'll let it burn all down. We'll let it burn all the way down, to your earlier point of, there's certain amount of people at the top that are just like, well, I'm going to be good regardless. So,
Yeah. And then there's like the other side of belonging, because we've seen it happen in industry.
mm-hmm.
We've seen industries not necessarily completely fall, but fall a whole lot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's the other side of belonging, trying to own something, trying to have so much control over something.
Mm-hmm.
If you figured out where you belonged, you would actually, your industry or your business would have been more successful, because you would have moved along with the times. You would have found a space within the time, instead of just trying to control or own everything.
Well, see, there's a couple of things that I feel are happening there. There is sort of that desire for marketplace control.
Hmm.
We do have antitrust laws in place for a reason, although people are trying to like skirt around them because they're always trying to corner the market, if you
Hmm.
will,
Hmm.
even though we've said monopolies are illegal, et cetera, et cetera. Um, but also there is that culture of belonging internally too.
Hmm.
I would venture to say that for those companies that are, instead of on a path of innovation, like we talked about before, on this path of conquering, that likely their company culture is reflecting that as well,
Right.
where the culture of the company is reflecting sort of this path of conquering versus belonging. And that means that there are certain people potentially at the top or the high top or the mid top, uh, that have all of the power, don't bring other people along with them. They're making these unilateral decisions,
Hmm.
and it's hitting the marketplace hard and fast because those like decisions, because of the internet, not only do they hit in your local market quickly, now they hit globally.
Yeah.
So now you can have like a potential global impact, and maybe not even have followed your stated company policies and procedures and have your general counsel with the hair on fire. It's like, what are you doing? Oh gosh.
Hmm. Hmm.
General counsel, hair on fire. Comms, PR,
Right.
hair on fire. Because somebody has decided that this is my moment where I'm just gonna take back control.
Right. Because they're not interested in belonging.
Mm-mm.
They're interested in controlling.
Control. That's right.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess the big key to kind of wrap up this episode, or at least to bring it to a softer close,
Mm-hmm.
um, is how much belonging does matter. How much it does matter to society as a whole, and to business, and to marketing, and to understanding your consumers, and to maximizing your revenue, and maximizing your profit, and maximizing the amount of people who just want to throw money at you. Like I I I can't stop saying that the business key is not sales related. I mean, if you're looking at the way that we look at the ledger sheet, then yes, it is.
Mm-hmm.
But chasing a sale, we've seen it work. We also know it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
Convincing someone to give you money is a different perspective, that once you figure that out, it makes everything easier. And such a large part of getting to that point is understanding belonging and embracing belonging. You know, you have the old sales way of thinking. Just find as many prospects as possible. Sell the 3 to 5% of them. If you're really good, 8 to 10% or 15 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of energy.
Yeah.
That's a lot of energy spent.
Mm-hmm.
And it, in a sense, I question how much good energy is coming back to refuel you when you do that.
Yeah.
Some people are wired to do it. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't knock those people. I know that I'm not one of them. So there is a bit of bias that I hold with that approach.
Yeah.
At the same time, even without that approach or that bias, take my money. It's a competitive advantage.
Yeah.
It is, and it comes from, such a significant part of that comes from understanding and embracing belonging. So now that y'all understand how important belonging is, why don't you belong to the community here
Yes.
of the culture of? Huh? Subscribe. Subscribe whether you're listening to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio. If you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe there. Subscribe to the Culture Pod on TikTok, on Instagram, on LinkedIn.
And share.
Share us, rate us, talk to us. It might look like we're just talking to each other here, but we're talking to y'all at the same time.
Yeah.
So if we're talking to y'all can talk back to us. That's part of the fun part, right? Let's continue to grow this community. You know, if you're interested in helping support financially, patreon.com/thecultureofpod. If you're not, tell people about our Patreon as well. If you like the merch that you see, we got stickers, we got shirts, we got mugs, we got things, is what I'm saying here. Okay? Join. Belong with us as we would like to belong with you. Sound good? I hope so.
That's great.
Yeah.
Great plug.
You know.
Thanks, Gary.
And thank you, Amber. It's another great episode. I'm going to bring it to a close. Thank you all for listening. And until next time, we will see you then.